So let's get to it, everybody. We obviously need to take on the top story, which was one that people were sending to me for like the last 2 weeks. I guess it's been going on since around that time. I want to say it happened just before the holidays, but we're going to go into a little bit of spoiler territory. Why? Because I don't think it's going to matter. In case people have not seen the end of the second season of The Mandalorian, they had a fairly big reveal. And big, I mean huge. As Luke Skywalker debuted in The Mandalorian. Not old man Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker. We're talking de-aged CG Luke Skywalker. And if you guys have not seen the reaction to this, it actually is kind of magical in a weird way. Because you had people who were watching this in a bar that were all cheering the second that green lightsaber went out. You had people literally crying when they saw Luke's face. And actually, I will say right here and now, compared to previous iterations, because people know, me and Romney have made fun of Butterfaced Leia in Rogue One. I think we both liked how Tarkin ended up looking, but
I didn't.
Oh, that's right. You had criticisms about it. But Leia, I believe we were both in agreement. That was bad.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you guys that significantly has changed, because let me see if I can actually bring this up. They have definitely upped their game when it comes to de-aging, because let me just go ahead and share this with you guys before we actually get into the meat of this story. Let's see. Here we go. So here we are. This is Luke in The Mandalorian. And actually, it looks pretty damn good considering. The lighting in this picture is actually a bit off. It actually is darker when the scene reveals itself. In fact, here's kind of a good example of it. Yeah, you can't really... The de-aging that they've been able to do has gotten a lot better. I mean, unless you have a different feeling about it, Romney.
Well, I haven't actually seen the actual moment in question, and I haven't really seen a lot of the images people have been tweeting out. I mean, I had heard about it, and I'd seen some snippets here and there, but I think a large part of it is that given that Disney Plus is a streaming service, given that people would be watching this on a smaller screen, unless you're someone who is extra and watches their streaming services on the big 4K TVs in your home, it's one of those things of, on a smaller screen, it probably would be a bit more passable, or in a place where you're not really in a theater where the lighting isn't really going to call attention to it. And then there has been some developments in the technology where in the past people would rely solely on CGI, but as you shown in that side-by-side that you had pulled up, we've also had an uptick in deepfake technology, where basically, for those who aren't familiar, deepfake is where you can basically replace one person's face with another person's face through a very complex... It's very complicated, but it basically uses artificial intelligence to basically do the substitutions.
Yeah.
And given that Mark Hamill himself was on set, and they basically were CGIing on top of his face as opposed to...
Yeah, the only thing I wasn't able to confirm is whether or not he was the voice for it, because I could have sworn he said as a tweet he was the voice. So at that point, it was Mark Hamill, but a lot of people were screaming on Twitter, no, because he's old now. He couldn't do that.
Yeah, it was him. I follow him on Twitter, and he confirmed, he was actually on set. He actually did do it. And when you're doing that kind of CGI work on top of someone who already looks close to what you're trying to make it look like, it's a lot easier as opposed to creating a CGI face from scratch, as is the case with Butterface Leia and Grand Moff Tarkin. Here, since they actually had someone there that had a close enough facial structure to what they were trying to do, it was a bit easier to tweak. Plus, it was something they had done previously in Rise of Skywalker during the scenes in which Luke is
with lightsaber light Leia, which looked a lot better, but a lot of that was because of the lighting. Like it could kind of mask some of the bad in there.
Yeah.
But here's how you know that it was actually fairly good, guys. Disney got letters from prominent actors displaying their concerns over that. Remember, we covered a story months ago about how they were basically going to recast I think it was James Dean.
Yep.
And James Dean has been dead for many years. And so they were going to basically CG bring him back to life to do a role. And so at that point, a lot of Hollywood is very concerned about being able to do this. And they saw this. And even though Mark was actually really happy with how things turned out, there were prominent actors within Disney and without Disney that were very worried about this. Because it's basically like, now they're no longer needed because you can just CG them in, kind of thing.
This is one of those cases where I'm quite surprised. This is another case where The Onion predicted the future with an article saying Hollywood announces plans to remake Jimmy Stewart.
Pretty much. And you know what? Jimmy Stewart might actually be on the way as they remake It's a Wonderful Life for modern audiences. No, I'm kidding. I don't know that for certain. But...
Well, I mean, there's already was one remake. I wouldn't be surprised if some studio decided to put another remake in the pipeline.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. But this is not really the meat of the story. Although, you know, I'm not that far, but as soon as I heard that, I immediately started rewatching The Mandalorian because I want to see this moment and see how awesome it was. Here's the meat of the story. A while back, we covered a YouTube channel called Star Wars Theory. Star Wars Theory is the one that created the Vader fan film, which, by the way, has a trailer out for its second episode for it, which actually, have you seen that, Romney? It looks amazing.
I haven't seen the trailer for the second episode, but I did see the first episode, and I thought it was pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, dude, you need to see the episode 2 trailer. You'll love it. It just barely hit like a week ago. But it's amazing. Well, one of the things that Star Wars Theory also does, aside from these Vader fan films and Star Wars lore, is he does reactions to major moments within the lore. So, like, for example, with The Mandalorian, he did the big reveals of Ahsoka Tano, as well as, I can't remember her name, but the other prominent Clone Wars character that was a Mandalorian, he also did the reveal for her as well, because that was a big deal. Well, he did Luke, and for those who don't know, he's been a big Luke Skywalker fan since he was 9. And immediately he sees Luke, and tears just start streaming down his face. It's actually it's a beautiful moment to me, because I'm not a guy who looked up to Luke Skywalker. I didn't really have a favorite Star Wars character. I did like Luke's story, but I didn't have a favorite Star Wars character until Expanded Universe kind of deal. But like, even I like to see Luke's journey, and when I saw this, if you guys haven't, it's kind of a magical moment to see like his basically his idol come back, and be able to be on the screen and be able to tell more stories with that. However, Pablo Hidalgo from the Star Wars story team is what they basically call it. It's like a think tank of Star Wars lore. And in fact, a lot of people might know the name Pablo Hidalgo because he's now since been referenced he's been kind of the lore consult for both Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams in The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. He has liked to say in interviews, like, they would call him in the middle of the night to confirm lore to him. And so he came out of nowhere after this reaction happened. And Pablo has a bad reputation of just being kind of trollish to the Star Wars community. I've seen a few instances, but I have not seen the whole laundry list of him doing this. But now he has another one to add to his list, which is somebody linking the Star Wars Theory reaction to Luke. And he basically put up this tweet, and I'm going to see if I can share it in a second. Here we go. Basically saying, emotions are not for sharing. And this is kind of a dig at the Star Wars fandom because of what happened with The Last Jedi, as well as Rise of Skywalker. So there is the Pablo Hidalgo tweet for it. Such a nice guy. And he basically gets lambasted during this time. He has a big debate that we now unfortunately cannot show because he has since blocked off his Twitter. So a lot of those reactions aren't even up there. But just to twist the knife a little bit more, you see this tweet right here? That became his Twitter banner when he blocked off his account. It's actually, I believe, to this day, still Pablo Hidalgo's Twitter banner. But let me see if I can do a check live and see if it'll work, because I think I've also got him blocked too. I'm on his blockchain because I'm
not that he's blocked. It's that he's made his account private.
Sorry, he made his account private, and I believe he also did he chained it. So since I follow Star Wars Theory, it's also going to be changed in there. And no, I can't actually bring it up. But well, this didn't go well for Pablo, as Star Wars Theory immediately reacted and said, I'd like an apology, etc., etc., and he was not willing to do it until Variety got into the mix. Actually, the story that we're referring to in this reporting is the Variety article for the Pablo Hidalgo Star Wars Theory situation. And it started a whole other slew of controversy there that finally Pablo Hidalgo came out and gave, in my opinion, the biggest non-apology he could have given. It's such a stale apology, especially considering the fact that he put this offensive tweet. I don't really find it offensive. I don't see the problem. But the fact that he put it up on his Twitter banner as a sign of victory kind of thing, it comes off really flat. Because he's just like, oh, well, I was just being sarcastic. I was just speaking out of turn. It was supposed to be funny. I'm sorry I hurt the guy's feelings. Keep in mind, he's been doing this for a while now, ever since The Last Jedi bombed. Every time he says something that pisses off somebody in the Star Wars fan base and he gets dogpiled on, it's just, oh, I was just being sarcastic. So at that point, Pablo, from what I understand, has not really suffered any major punishments in Disney for this, aside from he had to issue the apology. So at that point, obviously, since he had to issue the apology, it may be that he didn't even care. But let's just go ahead and get into our thoughts on this situation. I am at a loss for words in a lot of cases when stuff like this happens. Because I've watched a lot of Star Wars Theories videos, not just the Vader fan film. I've gone into a lot of his lore and seen kind of his analysis. I've even listened to a podcast that he actually does with it. And it's frustrating to me because I know that he knows the lore inside and out and could probably do Pablo Hidalgo's job. And when I see Pablo reacting that way to not only him, but to other individuals who are just as invested in the Star Wars community as Pablo claims to be, and that's how he reacts to him. It irritates the crap out of me, so much so that I want to see, sorry, I'm just going to be honest about it, I want to see Pablo get fired and Star Wars Theory get his job. Because if anybody deserves to be on that story team, it probably is Star Wars Theory. He does a lot of really good work there. And so it's frustrating to me because it's just more crap that doesn't necessarily need to happen here. We can all just appreciate that Luke came out. And I guess Pablo isn't appreciating it because he was so invested in the 2 sequel movies that he worked on. And there's actually a lot of talk that with the announcement of Luke, those sequel movies might just be added to Legends canon. They won't officially be canon anymore.
I doubt it. People have been saying that since Rise of Skywalker.
And I'm kind of there with you because we still have a timeline that is a ways off, and along with that Luke premiere, I don't know this because again I'm not in season 2, but apparently there were a lot of alluding to the First Order in season 2 of The Mandalorian. So at that point, we're still a ways off. I don't know if we can say that it's officially going to override. It's officially going to override the canon that exists.
Yeah, I doubt it. I doubt that Disney's gonna go that far because it's a case where it would basically be Disney admitting defeat, which we know Disney does not like to admit defeat in the face of really anything. And so it's one of those cases where people keep saying, oh, they're going to override the canon. I doubt it, not unless Disney does like a massive shakeup where they basically just decide, oh, we're just going to start completely over from scratch, which we're kind of getting with the High Republic stories that are now starting to come out, where it's not so much this is a full-on reboot. It's like, hey, we're just going to move to another part of the timeline that isn't tied to anything that's been super established, so that way we don't have the pressure of trying to adapt, trying to fill in gaps of existing events that we had no control over as a company.
Yeah. And I can see that debate there, but just curious, like, what's your take on Star Wars theory and the Pablo Hidalgo situation? Because we can obviously get into the canon of that. We actually have another Star Wars story that'll be coming later on in the agenda that'll kind of cover the canonicity here. But like, because I know that you've also been able to follow a lot of Star Wars theory's work. What's your take on that?
Well, I find it unfortunate that Hidalgo's taken this stance, but I have to say I'm not really that surprised. There could be a lot of factors. He could be still very burned by the fan reaction to the sequel trilogy, and probably burnt out with some of the other very toxic actions of the fan base in response to those films, and so that could very much be coloring his comments and coloring his perceptions of fan reactions like these. But it also just kind of demonstrates, and I think it illustrates a very important lesson that geeks and fans really need to take to heart. These companies don't care about you. You are merely someone who buys their product. And while it's one of those things of, still in bad form, it's kind of one of those things that people just need to accept that, hey, these are giant multi-million-dollar companies. They don't really care about the fans or not. All they care is, what's going to make us money? And the comments like these, whether they were sarcastic or not, it kind of demonstrates that sense that, hey, it's another executive being out of touch with the way the public is perceiving their product. In other news, water is wet.
Yeah, exactly. Alex, what's your take on that situation?
Yeah, Hidalgo comes off looking like a real asshole in that.
Who does?
Hidalgo.
Oh, okay. For a second there, I'm like, okay, I couldn't tell if you were saying Pablo or not, but okay, I was like, wow, Star Wars theory? What?
Nah, Star Wars theory's fine. Just, what a tool. Seriously. What's wrong with him?
Apparently there's a bunch of other interviews within the Star Wars community that have kind of basically shown that ever since Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, Pablo has been very butthurt about that, and he's been taking it out on the fans, roughly. So, basically Brie Larson, but without the press tour. So, at that point, it's just like, okay, well, it's great and all that you want to do that, but it's not going to end very well for you. And again, like, it just reaffirms to me that, okay, I'm not saying Pablo doesn't know anything about Star Wars, because I have no litmus to be able to tell you that. But I know the Star Wars theory does. I've seen a lot of his videos. I can vouch for that. I've seen the Vader fan film. I can vouch for his passion there. And that's why I'm saying, like, man, it'd be really great if Pablo got fired and Star Wars theory got to be able to work for them. It means he couldn't do the Vader fan film anymore, but I think I'd be okay with that kind of thing. That's just me. So, unfortunately, not a whole lot to be able to add in here unless you guys have additional thoughts, but then we can actually get into some of the other stories there. I will say that since we will be talking about Star Wars a little bit later, it is good to be able to see Luke being hinted there. I like that Ahsoka Tano's being given a bigger spotlight. And what Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have been able to do with it, although I have some concerns, is actually really good. I wouldn't go so far as Star Wars theory does to say it's resurrected Star Wars in Disney's eyes, but I think it's at least something better than what we were getting. Wrong. Any final thoughts on that?
No.
Not really.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move on into the next story that we had. Like I said, we were going to be talking about Star Wars again. And this was the other big thing that we missed. There was a big live stream event for Star Wars and future projects within Star Wars. But I'm going to make the announcements really quick, and I have an assignment for my fellow panelists here. You tell me if this sounds familiar. All right? So, first announcement that we have is Rogue Squadron, which is going to be directed by Patty Jenkins of the Wonder Woman franchise. Not that Rogue Squadron. Not that one. Not the one you're thinking. It is going to be based on the one that you're thinking, but it's not going to be like solely based around Luke's Rogue Squadron, so to speak. Originally, it was supposed to be, and I kid you not, this is how Patty described it, it was supposed to be the Star Wars equivalent of Top Gun. Just picture that in your head really quick, Alex.
Well,
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
it's not that much of a stretch when you really
No,
look
it
at
really
it.
isn't. But no, I guess the premise here is that it's going to be following the daughter of a famous pilot. They kind of hint that it's going to be like Wedge Antilles or something like that, but they don't confirm it. And it's going to be following her, not necessarily the titular Rogue Squadron. It's not even going to be, from what I understand, Luke's Rogue Squadron. It's going to be another one. Another squadron that took on the name.
Well, that's something that's not too out of the realm of possibility, considering that there's been a series of novels that Disney has launched called Alphabet Squadron, which has kind of been testing the waters for that genre.
Yeah, so at that point, so at that point, I mean, it's going to be something similar to it, Alex, but it's not going to be the one that you know. Like, the way that I guess the canon goes is that Luke's Rogue Squadron was disbanded after Return of the Jedi. So at that point, like, there was no need for them anymore. So we have that. We have an untitled film by Taika Waititi. Okay, well, Disney loves Taika, so that's great. The Obi-Wan series, which has now officially made the announcement that Hayden Christensen will be returning for that. He will be returning to the role of Anakin Skywalker for the Obi-Wan series. Okay, so we have that.
Okay.
We have Star Wars Ahsoka. So, Ahsoka Tano, the beloved character made by Dave Filoni, who just barely debuted, played by Rosario Dawson in The Mandalorian, will be getting her own series. And it will be following along the same canon line as The Mandalorian. It will be in the same time, and it will be happening in its own right. Okay? So it's going to be happening right alongside Mandalorian Season 3. We also have Rangers of the New Republic, which is another series that will be following right alongside The Mandalorian, and instead it's going to be following, I believe, Gina Carano's character as she begins to start up the Rangers of the New Republic. All right. We also have Star Wars Lando, which I believe they have now confirmed that, what's his name? The guy who played Lando in... Is it Donald Glover? Donald Glover. I believe they've said that he's not coming back to play him. I'm not sure about that. But this will be following Lando's journey after the events of Solo. You also have another series called Andor, which will be following Cassian Andor. How many people remember who Cassian Andor is?
Well, I mean, depends on whether or not they're fans of Rogue One.
That's true. Because Cassian Andor, who was the male lead in Rogue One, this will be following his life up until the events of Rogue One, from what I understand. And maybe even a little after. We're not sure.
I don't see really how after, because... Well,
yeah, he kind of died, but maybe he didn't. I don't know. Some people are making the argument that Cassian and What's-Her-Bucket actually survived. Jin, yeah.
I doubt. I mean, when you look in the final moments, considering that they're right within the blast radius...
That would kill the drama from that whole scene. It really would.
Yeah, again, have we not learned our lesson from Rise of Skywalker? Let the deaths matter.
Yes, yes. We also have a Star Wars series called The Acolyte, which will be... It's been compared to a series called The Russian Doll. It's basically going to be following, I believe, a Sith acolyte within the High Republic era. So, for all those who were screaming for Star Wars The High Republic, apparently this acolyte series will happen before High Republic does.
Or at least tied into that specific
it's tied into that universe, but they're still working out the details of the High Republic, so this is going to go on because it's already kind of set up.
Yeah, so looking at from what it says here on the official Star Wars blog post we're going from, it's in the final days of the High Republic, so likely the era leading up to the events of the prequel trilogy.
Oh, also, another thing I forgot to mention. So, Rangers, Ahsoka, and Mandalorian will eventually have a huge tie-in event to conclude all of their plot lines. Okay?
Well, I mean, it worked well for the Netflix Marvel shows with the Defenders, so...
Sure. I actually like the Defenders a lot more than a lot of people did. We also have Star Wars, The Bad Batch. So this is basically going to be a continuation of the Clone Wars series following The Bad Batch. These are a bunch of clones that have either been severely injured or are very much not of a good personality. They're very much like bad clones. They're not considered to be the docile clones that we all know. They are their own squadron, and they are nasty. In fact, a lot of them are more Jango Fett in comparison to, say, Rex or Cody. This one is going to be exciting for Alex because Star Wars Visions got announced. This is basically Star Wars equivalent of the Animatrix. So at that point, you're going to have a bunch of animated short films from various creators, as well as anime creators. I've heard like regular animation, anime, all that stuff, all doing, I believe the limit is like 5 to 10 minutes. A 5 to 10 minute short film in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I mean, we already have something that's a bit of a preview of what that might look like, since we've recently had a couple manga releases. One, The Legend of Luke Skywalker, which is kind of an anthology, and more recently we had Leia, Princess of Alderaan, also launched, drawn by a mangaka, part of the same sort of sphere. So it's a case of, hey, if you want to kind of get an idea of what anime Star Wars would look like, and you don't have the vintage Star Wars manga from when the prequel trilogy was in vogue, well, then those series may give you an indication of what that might look like, depending on what creator they give it to.
Yeah,
because that'll be the real interesting thing: is who are they going to get to really direct and work on some of these? I mean, off the top of my head, I can see them maybe approaching Anno.
Maybe. Or like, and some of these they actually even confirmed that some of them have already been approached and have already begun work. So for all we know, Anno already got approached, and he's working on it. I don't know.
I don't see it really.
Yeah, I can see.
I can see it, and you want to know why?
Creators.
Do you want to know why I can see it, Alex? Because 2 months before Ava 4.0 comes out, he delays on you for 7 months, and then you find out that he did it.
Yeah,
because that's who he is.
Yeah, I mainly say that I can see Disney approaching Anno because out of a lot of the higher profile anime creators, that would probably be kind of the easiest to approach. Because, I mean,
yes.
Miyazaki, I mean, Disney is kind of, although Disney had an interesting relationship with Studio Ghibli, after the license went over to G-Kids, I don't see Miyazaki or anybody from Ghibli being like, yeah, we're not going to really do this. And as for someone like Shinkai, I don't really see them approaching Makoto Shinkai because it's a case of, well, his style may not... I mean, I can see maybe an offer being extended, but beyond that, I don't know who else...
Besides, none of his characters will be able to touch each other's crotches. I'm never letting that quote go, Alex. I'm never doing it. I'm never doing it.
Yeah, which does raise the question. I can see them trying to approach someone like Tomino, because that I can see. Given...
I love that Romney made a positive out of that and started talking about Yoshiyuki Tomino.
Well, considering that Tomino is basically considered the father of the Gundam franchise,
yes.
I can see Disney being like, hey, you're the creator of this prominent franchise, why don't you do like a 5-minute short showing how you would handle Star Wars? And that is something that would kind of lend some marquee value.
Yep. Okay, so really quick, I just want to get through the remaining ones here. So we have Visions. We also have a droid story, which is going to be I believe it's conceptualized to be a cartoon series that will be following the epic antics of R2-D2 and C-3PO. And there will be a third droid hero in that mix. Originally, from what I can tell, rumored it was going to be BB-8. But now, since the sequel trilogy didn't do so well, they are scrapping BB-8. So they will have a new droid in that combo as well. Yeah. This is not really connected to anything else. This is just a Saturday morning cartoon, basically.
Well, and the article doesn't necessarily say new droid, it just says a new hero, so it could be something in the short-lived Star Wars Droids animated series where it was kind of an anthology of, here is a character that 3PO and R2-D2 happened to come across during one of their weird adventures outside of the events of the Star Wars trilogy. And so it could even be that, it could just be a new human character who happens to come into the care of 3PO and R2-D2.
Sure.
And they could kind of go that anthology route of thinking, okay, well, you have this new traveling trio going on various random adventures throughout the galaxy.
I love that RPX in our live chat. I don't think this is a good idea. You think? This was done before. And it didn't work out there either.
Yeah, but I think the key difference here is that back then, when that Droids cartoon and the Ewoks cartoons were made, that was before Star Wars had really become established as a cultural mainstay.
And you can make that argument.
Yeah, so people weren't really sure what Star Wars was going to be back then, whereas now things are a little bit more established, and with the success of The Mandalorian, they're probably thinking, okay, we have kind of an idea, people know what Star Wars is, and so having something that's a bit more of a lighthearted, comedic take on it with 3PO and R2-D2 and whoever, whether the new hero is a droid or a human or some other creature in the galaxy, it's a case of, okay, I can see them thinking, okay, we have a better idea of what we want to do with these characters now, so let's go with this.
Yep. So really quick before we go into the other Lucasfilm stuff that got announced there, I'm wondering if you guys are seeing any similarity with a few of these series. Especially since Jon Favreau is involved with them.
Well, I can definitely see them trying to, like, with Visions and the Bad Batch aside, I can see them trying to establish some sort of brand in terms of similarity, because that's what Marvel did with the Netflix shows and the other movies of the case.
Could you almost make the argument of a TV cinematic universe?
You mean kind of like what DC has already been doing?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure Disney probably took notes seeing what Warner Brothers did with Crisis on Infinite Earths and seeing how successful that was comparatively and thinking, hey, we can do this. We've already done a film cinematic universe. Let's beat Warner Brothers in this arena too.
I'm kind of there too, but I will bring up a complaint that I have seen bounced around, and I do think that it requires merit. We are all burnt out on the MCU. Still, like, I don't know about you guys. I saw all of the announcements for, some of the changes that they're doing to the release schedule, and I didn't care about any of it. And it's simply because I am still burnt out on Endgame. I'm just not looking to go into a movie theater or on Disney Plus and start this up again. All right. I'm willing to go try like WandaVision and things like that, but not because of, and so at that point, I do think it's a worry that some people can take from this, is that basically Favreau's setting up another cinematic universe that is going to burn us out with Star Wars, and then we're just not going to be interested in anything Disney does. And it's something to consider in that regard.
But I think the key difference here, and this is probably why the Crisis on Infinite Earths series on the CW fared a little bit better, is because with television, you can take your time building up the characters and building up the universe so that it feels more organic. Whereas with the MCU, they did build it up across multiple films before they did Avengers, and then they kind of planted the seeds from there. With films, you have a very limited amount of time to establish stuff. You only have like 2.5 hours if you're lucky. Whereas with television, that amount of time you have to establish the characters, to establish where they fit in this universe, you can take more of your time. Plus, it's also a case of it really depends on whether they want to build up to one giant, massive event that ties everything together, or merely just have it be where, we have these series that are concurrent that exist in the same universe. You'll see some events from one ripple into the other, but maybe if you don't try to do the whole, we're going to do our own version of Endgame, it's a lot easier to do that with television because, again, it's been done before. DC has done it twice, first with the animated series and then with their live-action shows.
And I'll give you credit for, because, like, I haven't watched all of it, but what I have seen between, like, Arrow and Flash, that was actually really well done. And from what I could tell, the build-up into Legends of Tomorrow was really well done. And so at that point, I will agree to you that the TV version could end up being a lot better in the long run than, say, doing movies that tie together.
Yeah, and especially considering that some of these shows are in different parts of the timeline. When you've got the Acolyte series taking place around the start of the prequel trilogy, most you could do if you're trying to do some sort of a crossover thing, and I'm not even going to go into that whole Veil of the Force thing, because that's a whole separate thing that honestly shouldn't even exist. But I can most see here's where events of this series that takes place at this point of the timeline, here's here is the aftermath in this other show that takes place in another part of the timeline. Because I guarantee you, if they try to work in time travel in Star Wars in any way, shape, or form, that is what is going to break the franchise.
Yeah. So that's the Star Wars stuff really quick. Really fast, Alex, do you kind of see the problem there too? Is that it's basically creating like a TV cinematic universe?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and go into the non-Star Wars ones. What, they actually announced non-Star Wars ones? Yes, they actually did. So the first one that they did was a Willow series for Disney Plus, which will be set decades after the 1988 movie. So we are now revisiting, and in fact, they're actually going to bring back Warwick Davis to play Willow. So at that point, you're going to have they're going to bring that back. They've also said that they have a Indiana Jones series in the works, but we don't know too much details on that one just yet.
Yeah, all we know is that we have Harrison Ford coming back and that it's being directed by James Mangold, which that's got my attention because, for those of you who don't know, James Mangold was the director of Logan. And so...
which has got my interest, too, because I'd be interested to see what he does with Indy.
Indeed.
So, we have those, but ultimately the Star Wars announcements were awesome. I will say personally, I'm looking forward to the Ahsoka series. I have not seen her in Season 2 yet, but everybody has been telling me she's a highlight of Season 2 Mandalorian. I'm looking forward to the Bad Batch. Even Visions has piqued my interest. I will be honest, though. I'm not interested in Andor, and I'm not interested in Lando.
There's one announcement we have forgot to touch, because in addition to, like, reviving Lucasfilm properties, there's one original series that they're also going to be producing, and that's based off of the novel Children of Blood and Bone.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and that, for those of you who don't know, I haven't read it, but it's kind of one of the novel series that has kind of reignited what is often called the Afro-fantasy genre, where rather than creating a fantasy and future sci-fi series based on Western influences, this is one drawing from African storytelling traditions and settings. And so I'm really curious to see how they handled it. Granted, Black Panther establishes that when Disney is willing to invest the money into it, you can actually come up with something pretty amazing. So I'm definitely curious to see how Lucasfilm adapts Children of Blood and Bone.
No, I'll be very interested to see what they're doing with it. But yeah, this is pretty much the announcements that we had. So final thoughts on these. I am excited for some of them. I think it's very interesting to be able to bring back things like Hayden Christensen reprising Anakin Skywalker when he said years ago he would never come back. So I'm glad that they kind of work things out for him. Maybe he gets another shot at being able to do Anakin. I'm more excited, I will be honest, for like Rangers of the New Republic, Ahsoka, the Bad Batch. That's got my interest. The other stuff is just kind of... I can't say I'm interested in the Acolyte. I can't say I'm interested in Andor or Lando. Visions vaguely has my interest, much like the Animatrix or any of the other compilation films have. It's just one of those things that I'll take on. But overall, I am excited for what they're planning to do with it. Final thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, I may be the odd man out here, but I'm more interested in Willow and some of the more original stuff because I'm kind of still burnt out on Star Wars. After Rise of Skywalker, that's kind of when I went like, okay, the series is done. I am done with it. I am moving on with my life. And so I'm definitely curious to see kind of this more original stuff. Like Willow is a film I did grow up with. Granted, it's not perfect. It does have some problems, but it is a world I would be curious to see revisited, especially given the technology that we have now that didn't exist back when the film was made.
I mean, for crying out loud, I didn't have a problem when they revisited the Dark Crystal. Like that world was rife with lore to explore. Same thing for Willow.
Yeah, and then in the same case, Children of Blood and Bone, I'm more or less excited just because it's a case of, hey, this is something actually new, unique, and different, and not banking on pointless nostalgia like everything else Disney has been doing.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm sorry, Alex, what?
Yeah, I'm just saying that's a really good, fair point.
Yeah, it's a lot of the stuff that they're doing right now is banking on nostalgia, but I'm at least happy with some of the offshoots that we're getting from that.